The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater.
Hey, I didn't know you guys were coming today. Just kidding. Hey, welcome back. It's Jamie Davis, the host of the Hidden Stars of Theater. It is great to have you here in the camper. And are you ready to meet another great hidden star of the theater world? We got a great one today for you. His name is Bogaev. Now, if you remember in our last episode, we met Emma Bogaev. Bogaev is not that common of a name. There's a method behind this madness, and that's because they're husband and wife. They actually met on the road while touring, and we're going to hear a little bit about that. But man, Bo is cool. Bo is a carpenter. Bo has done spent some time doing some fly stuff, and even flew some cats through the air. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about that, but sounds crazy. Don't you go and try to just throw your cats. Not the same thing. We'll talk about it. But anyway, hey. We have also got a great feature school today, and that is Moore High School from Moore, Oklahoma, with their coach, Gina Thomason. And welcome, Moore. It is great to have you guys. And man, I'm happy to feature you and, of course, show some of your shots from your shows this year. And they're crazy good. And it looks like you guys had some great productions. So we're honored to do that. And other than that, hey, everybody, you are my honored guest today as well, as always. So reach out, send me some messages. Tell me, if maybe your school isn't a featured school, but you'd like to have some of your stuff shown. I'm going to start working some of that in as I can. So my email address, you'll find it down in the description area of this video. So reach out to me, send me some of your show shots. If you want to shoot a video, who knows what we're going to do. But man, I just love to feature great theater being done by cool kids all over this world. So especially if you're one of our international watchers, we got people watching from at least 8 different countries that I've seen. So, and all over the US. So just a great thing. But for now, let's see those show shots. We're ready to get into this with Bo and learn more about the world that he lives in. But first, let's see what Moore High School did this year. So let's roll those pictures.
Hey, this is Gina Thomason, and I just wanted to give a big shout out for Moore High School Drama. We have a wonderful department, and I have absolutely amazing students. I've included some pictures, and so hopefully you'll love seeing how amazing they are. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you, Moore High School. Those look like great shots from your shows this year. Looks like you guys had a good season. And Gina Thomason, thank you for sending those in, and thank you for just giving us a shout out there. So it's time to meet our guest this week, our hidden star of theater, Bogaev. Bo, welcome to the Hidden Stars of Theater. It is so good to have you, man. I've been looking forward to hearing your story and learning more about what it means to be a carpenter in the world of the theater, and what it's like to actually get to fly a cat across stage legally. Not just like picking one up and throwing it or something, which maybe might have been times no, I never wanted to do that. But anyway, welcome, sir. Welcome. It is our privilege to have you here.
Good to
Absolutely.
Be here.
Yeah. And so, we're going to get right into it. There's no reason to delay. And as always, the first thing we want to do is just kind of get to know you and hear your story and hear what it is that inspired you to do what you do, because everybody's story is unique, and everybody's story is valuable and is important. So, dude, Bo, just tell us, what is a Bogaev?
All right. Well, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm a little scatterbrained, so I just wrote down some notes. So if you see me glancing down, I'm just trying to tell this in a timely order. So I'm from Virginia originally. I went to public school in Richmond, or just north of Richmond, and then I went to college in Virginia as well at Christopher Newport University. I kind of started playing with power tools and stuff when I was a kid, but when I was in middle school, we had an incredible shop teacher named Mr. Sloan, who gave me just an incredible foundation for woodworking and love for working in a shop and all things sawdust.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think I was in 7th grade when I first took his class. And then the following year, I took it in 8th grade, which was a full year-long course instead of a semester-long course. And we actually learned how to hand draft during that time as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's great. So I had an early exposure to woodworking, a little bit of metalworking, and actually some hand drafting, which are all skills that are, widely used in the scenic aspect of theater. I also took my first theater class in middle school because I had the interest, but I didn't really know anything at all about it. I remember there was a time where they posted the auditions for the yearly play, and I was really interested, but I just didn't follow through. And but I had the interest, and I fortunately was able to start kind of with that, get the introduction to theater and woodworking in middle school. In high school, my freshman year, it was a whole new group of kids for me because it was a different high school than the middle school I had attended. Like everyone kind of goes from one to the other in my county.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was meeting new friends, and in a whole new school system. So I was kind of trying to find a group I fell into. And then my sophomore year, I decided to go ahead and take theater again because I remembered having a good time in middle school, and it was something I really wanted to pursue. During that year, I made some good friends in theater and found this tight-knit group of folks I really wanted to be a part of. And then I actually got cast in my first main stage as a performer, and it was all downhill from there. I fell in love with theater, and I
you were addicted at that point, huh?
Yeah, I signed up for the next class the next year and auditioned for every play from that point forward. And I also continued to do theater when I was a senior in high school. So I took our theaters 1, 2, and 3, and in year 2, she moves away from our program moved away from like theater games and short scenes to the technical aspects of theater to kind of teach everybody about all the parts. So my junior year of high school, I started doing some scenic construction and learning about some tools that were used in theater frequently, and they were like all the same tools I used in the wood shop. So I found myself really getting the hang of this sort of thing quickly. And so in addition to me trying to be in all the shows for my junior and senior year, I was also helping pretty actively build them all in my free time around the shop. The funny thing is, though, is I still had much stronger feelings towards either performing or teaching theater. And so in 12th grade, I still was acting and taking theater class, but then I started doing show choir as well because I wanted to try and become a better performer. You got to
be that triple threat, right?
Yeah, and I was not, but I sure tried. So I started taking the chorus classes and the theater stuff, and I looked at the local college actually had a course on teaching theater, so I kind of went there and toured the school, and it just didn't feel like the right program for me. And then later on in the year, I actually had an opportunity to take a tech class at the same college that I passed up to be in a show, which is kind of funny in retrospect that I could have had a chance to really get a good head start into the tech world when I was still in high school at a little bit more advanced level than what was available at the time. So I chose to perform.
You got cast in a show and decided to do that? Got you.
Yeah.
Cool.
So at that time it was still, tech was just kind of cool and I thought it was interesting, but it was not something that lit my, that I had a fire burning for.
Yeah.
So I got accepted to Christopher Newport University and went from high school to there, and I had chose to be a performer at the start of school. So, I was taking a couple acting classes and dance classes and voice lessons, and but Christopher Newport is a liberal arts college, so you have to take classes in the tech side of things as well, even if you're on the performer track. So I think it was my second semester of freshman year, I took my first tech class, and my teacher, Tanya, who went on to become my mentor, saw that I had an aptitude for power tools and carpentry projects. And so I started, even as an actor, getting put on a little bit more advanced projects than the other people in my classes. And that went on to happen the next year as I continued taking classes and stuff for performance. I worked the fly rail for Grapes of Wrath.
Oh, wow.
Still doing the acting and stuff, but it was a very fly heavy show. So it was quite a great exposure for me to have to the rigging and fly system of backstage. And so I keep, I will say I had a pretty good show run. And so throughout the first part of my college, I kept having these instances that kind of indicated that tech just really made sense to me. And I still was trying to perform. And I was working really hard at trying to become a good performer. And one of my voice teacher, her name is Kim Landrum, saw me working really hard and saw that I wasn't getting the gains that other more successful voice students were getting. And she sat me down and had a conversation with me about her wanting me to be successful in the future and what could we do to maybe look at a better route and then keep performance as something that I could do for fun or always be a part of my life. So
was that a tough pill to swallow?
Yeah, absolutely. I had kind of, my parents had been sort of asking me if, like, you're only making B's and C's in your acting classes. Is really the grades you should be making for that. And they weren't being mean about it, but they were just asking real questions. And it took until my professor kind of sat me down and told it to me straight for me to really understand it. And like, yeah, you know what, maybe I need to look at other things. Yeah, and I was always good at, I'm very grateful for it because I wouldn't be where I am today without that initial point. But I was always good at math and physics, and working with my hands always made sense to me. And so I decided to make the switch to tech. One thing I forgot to mention that some of you guys might be able to relate to is that in between graduating high school and starting college, I was diagnosed with ADD and started getting some academic help at college to accommodate those learning needs. And then I also started taking medicine for my ADD. So throughout this whole time period, which I was feeling a little insecure about my abilities as a performer and not having the direction I wanted to ultimately go in life, I was also dealing with finding a new way to act in school and use the new resources that have been given to me. Fortunately, most of my teachers were extremely accommodating with all that stuff. I actually don't have a teacher that was bad about that. But so in the midst of all this, trying to figure out which direction I wanted to go, I was also figuring out how to learn in a new way that would help me stay on task and do what I needed to do. So junior year, I made the decision to switch to tech theater, and I started working in the wood shop because I knew that was something I wanted to do. Tanya Sweet, who I mentioned earlier, just sort of took me under her wing and started helping me figure out where I wanted to go. And I knew I wanted to be a carpenter. I liked building stuff. I wanted to work with my hands. I could focus when I was working with my hands, and that's what I wanted to do. So she started giving me shop hours. The scene shop at school was open from 1 to 4, Tuesday through Friday, The first year I worked like 8 hours a week, and then my next 2 years of school, I worked there 16 hours a week every semester. Let me see where we're at. Senior year. So after I switched to tech, one of my roommates actually had a friend whose dad worked at the local arena as the head of the rigging. So so as I started falling more into tech, I actually had the opportunity to work as a local rigger for concerts and stuff at a venue about 20 minutes from school. And that was where I started getting my first experience of like what a roadhouse or a touring theater or touring arena is dealt with and how the rigging and everything works for that. Very invaluable experience. It helped me learn my first knot, a bowline. It helped me just understand how tours come in and rig stuff, which my school wasn't at that time able to give us as much information about. What I did gain from school was a lot of live theater stuff. We had a huge shop with all the tools that we could need or want, and we had a wonderful theater facility that was all attached. So I was able to get a very thorough experience with the fabrication and load-in aspect of a production show, and by which I mean a show that was being built and set up in a theater and staying there and then getting struck down at the end rather than moving to a different place. And so as I progressed in my shop time, I and I learned about lighting and audio as well to an extent, and I learned scenic painting. I also started to learn more skills with rigging, and my teacher taught me how to weld for one production. And she started putting me in more leadership roles on the builds of shows, so being a master carpenter and in charge of the more detailed tasks. And then my fifth year of school, and then after my fourth year of school, I knew I was going to have to take a fifth year because of switching my major. And I went with but I thought I was ready to start working in the field. So my teacher suggested summer stock theater.
Okay.
So I went to SETC, which is Southeastern Theater Conference. It happens every spring, and except for this one, I suppose. And and it's a huge theatrical job fair. Essentially, you can make a ton of contacts. You can send your resume to a lot of different people, and you can meet face to face and have short interviews with folks.
That's great.
And so I went with a bunch of my fellow students to Louisville, Kentucky, and we started. I started talking to people, and we had a big list of all the vendors and everybody there. And I knew I wanted to talk to Nashville Children's Theater. And Networks Presentations. I got a little ahead of myself. Before SETC, I got my years mixed up. Please excuse me. Senior year, I got my first job over the summer by applying online, and I got Longlake Camp for the Arts, and I went up there, and they do a three-week sessions with over 10 plays and musicals every 3 weeks that I was building and changing over and everything. And so that really helped. How
many total shows is that? You did it in a summer?
Yeah, I think like 30 productions every summer.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that's in upstate New York, is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Beautiful place, wonderful place for kids who are starting in the arts to go if they're able to. And it really gave me such a strong foundation for like even just the basics of theater and continue to build upon what I learned in college.
Awesome.
Which brought me back to school my fifth year and continuing all this stuff with more sorry, I'm I'm such a scatterbrain.
You're good, man.
Just continuing more classes and really getting into the more detailed projects and more tools. And I started to do my senior thesis, which had a practical part and a written part. And my practical portion was building the set for Chicago. And then my written portion was about the touring industry, because I had found that I really wanted to go be a part of touring. It seemed like a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And
was that based on your rigging in the arena, your experience there, and kind of seeing those? Yeah, cool.
And I knew I wanted to travel and just get out there. So then I went to SETC, which I already spoke about, and I talked to Nashville Children's Theater, because even though they weren't a touring company, they had a shop attached to the theater, and they built all their own sets, and their sets were fantastic. And I talked to Networks Presentations, which is a touring producer. Had a great conversation with both people, or both sets of people, but I ended up taking Nashville Children's Theater because they could offer me a job when I needed to hear by. After I accepted that job, I went back to camp. First I moved all my stuff into a box, shipped the box to U-Haul, went up to camp in upstate New York again, and then met all my stuff in Nashville to start this job in a city I'd never been to. And it was there I started getting really good at welding, because we did a couple metal sets. And we would do 2 90-minute shows every morning and then build for the rest of the afternoon on the next show. And there was a 5-show season for Nashville Children's Theater. So I had a huge opportunity to really get even more experience in running shows and building them at the same time, but at a much higher quality than like the camp was, since it's a much faster paced system there. While I was in Nashville, I also started working with the local overhire stagehands, and so I got a couple calls in the big buildings in town. And the theater is actually Equity Theater, so it was my first opportunity to work with union members as well, even though I wasn't one at the time. I get the opportunity to be a technical director of NCT the next year, but it would require me giving up my camp summer.
Gotcha, because you'd have to work there over the summer too. That makes sense.
At that point, I didn't want to give up camp, and I also wanted to be able to travel the next year if I got a tour offer. So I decided not to be a TD at the Children's Theater. Camp was still looking for one, and I ended up being the co-TD of camp that summer. While I was there, I got a call, and I was offered a tour for the whole next year.
Wow.
When I was expecting a 2-month tour.
And was that based on the connection you made at SCTC?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Nice.
I called them back the next year just to see if my resume was still there, and if not, to hand them my resume again. And that's a very important part of theater in general, is kind of following up with your contacts and just, making sure that they still know who you are.
Got to do the hustle.
Yeah, you absolutely have to. So it's my 3rd year at camp. I'm co-TD for the first time. It's my first real management position working professionally. And on top of that, we're opening a new theater built from scratch at the camp's property that summer. And that exposed me to all the ins and outs of ordering equipment and presenting a bid to your supervisor and also to the company, and negotiating prices and trying to figure out what you can do for the dollar, and all the while still managing a crew out there, getting the 3 other theaters up and running.
So was that any of that things that they taught you in college? I mean, because I know that, did they cover that? That's good. That's good that they did that.
They covered parts of it, and a lot of it was very much trial by fire, but
right.
The foundations I got in college allowed me to figure out how to make a rigging system in the new theater. We didn't have a fly system, but we have to hang lighting battens in there. So I used my foundations from college and my knowledge of rigging to determine the best way to put lighting battens in this theater and where the speakers to hang from, and using my people who knew more about lights and sound to help with their input on that equipment, and really learning to use my people to help me make more informed decisions.
That's good.
So I go from being co-TD at camp to back to Nashville for the fall, just for a few weeks to weld together The Outsiders. They did this really cool back of a billboard set, and it was all metal. And so I got to do a lot of welding for a week and a half. And then I went to Owensboro, Kentucky to start Anything Goes second national tour as a flyman. And I also got my union membership at that time to IATSE, which has been hugely beneficial to me since then. I can talk more about that in a little while. So we do Anything Goes. I meet my lovely wife, Emma, and I convince her to come to camp with me the next summer after Anything Goes closes. Once she does, we go back to camp, and it's my 4th summer there. I'm co-TD again, and we have another successful summer. But Emma and I decide that we're ready to move on the next year and not go back. But however, that 4th summer at camp, I get a call from the touring folks, and they tell me that that they would like to offer me the head carpenter position for the next tour we had signed on for.
Oh, that's awesome.
Called Bullets Over Broadway. So that's moving up into a management role on the tour. That's the head of the tech side of things while you're on the road is the head carpenter. And after 1 year of road experience, it's kind of a big shoes to fill, but people thought I was ready, and I thought I was as well. And so I went out the next year as head carpenter, and Emma was a head wardrobe. So we both moved up to department heads, and had a successful tour with Bullets. We went to some big cities like LA and had an amazing time. And I learned a whole lot more about the union and about the industry on the road as a management person, and just a lot more of the ins and outs of how it all works. So Bullets ends. Emma and I are still dating. In between Bullets and Into the Woods, my next tour for the following year, I get the opportunity to redo a stage floor on a Disney cruise ship as it travels from Florida to Spain. Couldn't turn that down. Had the opportunity to see a couple of foreign countries and just do a new gig and get paid decently while I was there. So I did that.
Were there passengers, or was it just you and the crew?
No.
That's interesting.
It was us, the crew, and a bunch of different vendors. So the boat was due for a dry dock.
Okay.
And they didn't want to lose any of the time while I had to travel from Florida to the dry dock. So they ripped up all the carpet and replaced it all while we were traveling across the Atlantic. And we redid the stage floor. And They had 1,000 different projects going on.
Oh, yeah.
All over the world. There's like companies of whole Russian only crews and like, people from South America and people from England. So there's lots of languages, lots of different folks. It was a pretty wild experience.
Did you get to use the water tubes, the water slides or anything?
No, all that stuff.
Oh, man.
And it was filled with trash by the end of the trip because you can't dispose of any of your trash. So they just filled all the nice decks and pools and everything with all the construction trash. It was pretty wild.
Nobody tell Mickey. He'll be ticked.
Yeah, don't tell Mickey. So I get back from that. I propose to Emma, and then we go on Into the Woods national tour, which is a Fiasco Theater production version of it, which is a pared down version. The actors are also all the musicians. And it was my first time doing an equity tour. So even though I'd worked with equity members in Nashville, this is my first time working with them on the road, which is a much different scenario in road life from non-equity to equity, even on the cruise side. That was a 3-truck show, and I was the only carpenter, so not only was I in charge of the whole tech department, I was also had to build the set by myself, every load in and load out, while I managed the crew. So that presented a unique challenge.
So did you have you managed and built the set, but did you have locals help you through that? I mean, how do you do it if you're the only carpenter?
Yeah, so every city we would get 10 local carpenters to help us.
Wow.
And so so that's that. I'm gonna step back real quick because I forgot to say Anything Goes was 3 semi trucks. Bullets Over Broadway was 4 semi trucks. Into the Woods was 3 semi trucks. And then my next tour, the Color Purple revival, was a 4-truck show, and I was a carpenter only again, and that was an equity tour as well.
Wow.
So we did Color Purple, and then after Color Purple, Emma and I were both ready for a break, being department heads, so we both stepped down to being assistants for Cats. That was another equity tour. That was a 5-truck show. And for this one, I was the Foy operator. If you're not familiar with Foy, it's a human or performer flying company, and it's pretty much the theatrical industry standard. They flew Lady Gaga at the Super Bowl, and just pretty much, and they're the ones who started doing Peter Pan. So to get the opportunity to work with such a influential company and the guys who were pretty much at the height of rigging technology was such a cool idea for me. And not only all of that, but I also was working with the automated system, which is something I hadn't done before. So I got to learn a lot more about rigging and about automated systems in the theatrical sense, as far as winches and limits and that sort of thing.
Nice. And that's Foy. It's Foy. Is that right? Foy?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Cool.
And then I forgot to mention this the other day, Jamie, but actually at the end of my tenure with Cats, I had to be the stand-in head carpenter. After I had trained my replacement, our head carpenter had a family emergency, so I was the head carpenter of Cats for a week as well, even though I was trying not to be the head carpenter of that one.
You were trying to not be around cats anymore.
Yeah.
At least you weren't allergic. Sorry.
No, at least I wasn't allergic.
Really bad.
Yeah, pretty. Cats ended. We had a couple months off, and then we started Charlie and the Chocolate Factory national tour as a head carpenter again. This was a 4-truck show, and it is the most scenically demanding show that I've been on to date, because it has all the scenes where you meet the different kids and see what thing kills them or injures them or maims them or whatever else. And each one of those is used once in a scene and then goes on. And so it's just a much busier show, and it had a lot of pieces that used to be automated technology that were changed to not being automated for the second national tour. So it was just, I had to kind of draw on all of my experience and to really be able to figure out the show and to run the show effectively, because it's a very busy show track.
Yeah, and when you say, all of the ways that children die and are maimed and are hurt, it sounds much darker than it really is. For sure, but it is pretty dark. That's
it
great.
Can be dark, yeah. It's interesting. And that kind of brings us to today, where I'm talking to you guys. Uh-oh.
all of that you just said, that was all kind of within the span of, 7 or 8 years, right?
Yeah, so I graduated college in 2013. I did my first summer at camp in 2012, and then I've been touring since 2014.
You have been hopping, which is just awesome. That is great. Well, man, I want to kind of go back and pull some things out
Sure.
and find out a little bit more, because that was all good for sure. So one of the things that really stands out to me is just how much specific people invested in you and really had an effect on you. Your teachers, I mean, you're still able to now, tell me exactly who they were and what they did, even from middle school. Mr. Sloan, right? The shop teacher. And then
Yes,
Tanya
sir, yeah.
Tanya Sweet in college. And, talk to us a little bit, because our students are kind of in the middle of that right now. How much would you suggest to them to not only really cherish that relationship and get all they can out of it with their teachers now, but also when they're looking for a college, how important is that, finding that mentor to that selection process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think generally, teachers, really want to see all of their students excel. And when you get passionate about something, they're teaching that subject because they're already passionate about it anyway. And if they see you as a student get passionate about that, they're going to totally feed off of that, and they're going to want to keep driving you to do better. And they'll be so happy to hear you ask for more information or just to learn more, to do more, and to try and to make better of yourself. And I think that's extremely important in college, and it's a much tougher circumstance to look for it there, I think, at times, because you either need to know someone who's already at the school in the program who can kind of tell you about the situation, or you have to do a lot of research and kind of look at the sizes of schools you're at and what the teachers typically provide for their students and how big the theater department is. Because in some cases, you're just not going to get those sort of bonds with teachers until your junior or senior year in larger schools. And it just kind of takes you grinding and putting the work in before that. So
no, that's good.
I guess the bottom line of it all is, like, if you work hard and are passionate about it, someone is going to see that and try and encourage that in you.
Bogaev didn't come to CNU to study technical direction with me, and it was kind of a surprise when he turned out to be one of my awesome students. I had a student who worked with me quite closely named Tom, who I affectionately called Tall Tom because he was very tall, and Tall Tom was graduating, and Bogaev came in and left a little note on my toolbox right under where Tall Tom always signed in that just said average Bogaev. And that's how he let me know that he was going to be my next great student. And he was. He is one of the hardest workers I have ever known. He gives his all. He gives his heart into all of his projects. He's so great to work with. One of the shows that he worked with me on was Steel Pier, which is a really big musical, and I was very understaffed at the time. My scene shop foreman was out sick. I had a lot of students, and so it was really just me and students going full force at this huge show, and Bogaev just started showing up, and then he kept showing up, and then he kept showing up with better answers, and we got the show finished and ready to go, except for the details on the airplane. And I said, could you cut the propeller for me? And the propeller was really very simple design. It was a piece of 1x4 with a bolt through it, and it was like not a big deal. And I came back into my shop a little while later, and he had taken the 1x4, put the bolt through it, and then carved it into an actual three-dimensional propeller. I said, Bogaev, what are you doing? And he said, well, I just don't think that we were giving it our all, and I have now. And it was a magnificently beautiful, could actually fly a flying propeller. And it just shows how much Bogaev cares about everything that he works on and all the projects that I had him working with me on. And boy, I was blessed to have him as a student when my shop was understaffed, and then have him as a student when he was just eager to learn anything. Can I draft that? Can I learn how to weld? Can you teach me this? I mean, anything that I was willing to talked to him about, he was like, let's learn it, let's do it. And then to be able to follow his story since he's graduated from CNU and had a successful career and a beautiful marriage, a wonderful family out there. I've become familiar with his parents and his sister and his brother and his aunts and uncles and his beautiful wife as well. So I've been very lucky to have Bogaev as one of my great students. And on rough days, great students are what keep you going. I promise.
That's great. And I think it's worth saying, you had a good experience at Christopher Newport University, right? And where is Christopher Newport, just so people know?
It's in Newport News, Virginia, about an hour east of Richmond.
Sounds like a beautiful place.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's got a very wonderful, fairly new theater facility there. So it's got a pretty state-of-the-art theater for folks to use. That
sounds great. Yeah, it sounds like you had great experience there. So you're Mr. Sloan and Tanya Sweet, obviously, as people who invested in you and saw value in you, I'm just curious, did you know at the time, I mean, is that something that you thought, man, this relationship is great and they're really investing in me? That sounds really nerdy to say about a kid, but did you kind of get that then? Or is it something when you looked back and thought, wow, I really got a lot more out of it than what I knew I was getting?
I'd say for Mr. Sloan, the latter is definitely true. I would see him at different fairs, art fairs or whatever, and I'd go talk to him when I was in high school, and I would thank him for the foundation he gave me.
Cool.
Once I started getting into like building sets and stuff a little bit in high school. Tanya Sweet, as our relationship started to develop, I started to see it for what it was and what it is. And, being older, I was able, and also having a lot of clarity after really finding my path, and figuring out what direction I wanted to go in. I was able to see what she had to offer and try and nurture that relationship myself as well. Cause I just knew she had a wealth of information that she'd be happy to give me.
That's brilliant. I think too often in life, students get focused on other things and they miss those, right? Too many people have Tanya Sweets in their life and they don't take advantage of that. So, man, that's one thing I'd encourage all of our students listening to do is to find those people. And while you have them, take advantage of it and learn and have them, teach you what they can, for sure.
And what's funny is Emma and I both have a very similar experience in that she still is very good friends with her college mentor, Rosa Lazaro. And our two mentors got to meet at our wedding, and we're both extremely happy for that. But so it's
that's cool.
Something that we both thought was really interesting as our relationship grew, is that we both had just such an important mentor from college, who were just these strong women who showed us so much about theater and how to be professionals.
That's great. All of our stars, it seems like that is one of the commonalities that they have. Every one of them has had a strong mentor when they were beginning. So that's a great thing to note if you want to get into professional theater, really anything in life, but specifically in this realm, so to speak. So one of the other things you mentioned was being at a liberal arts college required you to take tech, even though you were a performance major. So is that something you recommend, even if somebody doesn't go to a liberal arts college, that they immerse themselves in, if they're a performance-based track, to try to do some tech, and if they're tech-based, to try to do some performance? You think that's important?
I absolutely do. And I think both sides of theater really offer something to you outside of the industry as well when you learn parts of them. I think my college was really adamant about script adherence and understanding the playwright's vision and all that stuff in performance and in design. And so having that sort of drilled into me just helped me have a better understanding of why things were designed a certain way or why people act a certain way. And the psychology that goes into sort of the acting realm can help you sort of understand and empathize people's actions in the real world. And then most of the things you're going to learn on the tech side are handy skills, just to have in general, like using a screw gun or, being able to hammer a nail or looking at something and knowing that it's safe to stand on or it's not safe to stand on. That
is definitely a good thing to know.
And so, I think there's, like, for anyone, at least some exposure to the other side can help you understand more outside of theater, but also empathize with your coworkers within theater, which can be, it's easy to put a barrier between the tech and the actors at times, but when you are all one company, you're all one company. And the empathy of what someone else's job is and what their strengths are versus yours can only help relationships grow, I think.
No, that's good. That's absolutely right. Yeah. It is always good to walk in someone else's shoes when you have to live with them, for sure. So, well, awesome. So what I want to do now is kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it, right?
Sure.
You're the first carpenter that we've had in our series. And the first Flyman and the first Foy operator. You are a man with many talents. And so we want to just get into the meat of that and just kind of tell us just on a little more technical, what are the different roles within that world, and what are some of the things that they do? What are their responsibilities? Because we have some students who may not know, and they just might be considering one of them. So,
sure. Yeah.
Some knowledge.
So, the first thing I'll say is that all of the jobs that I have done that I've talked about today fall under carpentry, I would say. And even technical direction, because that technical directors typically come from the carpentry department. And then the sort of different designations kind of come into play depending on how big or small the production you're on is. Because if it's a small, community theater, you might be the technical director and the master carpenter and the scenic designer.
And the lead.
And the scenic paint. Yeah, and the lead, yeah, if it's a real small community theater. So when you're able to refer to one of those jobs explicitly as the role you had, the carpentry portion is implied, but the other portion of it is it's kind of it can show the size of a production you're on. So me being the Foy operator, the Foy carpenter on Cats, I was in charge because I was still a carpenter. I still built stage left during load in, and after I assembled my Foy truss, I would then build stage left. And then during the show run, I would just be responsible for running the Foy system. And that involves like checking the performer's rigging every day, making sure all the harnesses are good, making sure the system is working, and just really going through everything with the understanding that someone's life is on the line with that. Being a rigger.
No pressure at all, right?
No pressure at all, yeah.
So do you ever get to fly just to test it out? Do you get to be in the harness?
So there's two effects. There's one with a rope and one with a harness.
Okay.
I only put the harness on if I had to because it was really uncomfortable. But before I ever let a performer go on the system, I would run it through with me on the rope, just because I would also be able to do one final once-over and look at stuff when I was up in the rope and just do one final check. But, I never put one of the actors up in the system before I had done it myself in every new city. You
didn't wear spandex, though, right?
I did not wear spandex,
That's
no. It's not quite my style. So like that's that job. And then, at Nashville Children's Theater, I was titled the Master Carpenter. But I often was running the fly rail for the show. And I was also doing electrician work for the show as well. Cause there was only 3 full-time technical employees of that theater. So I was wearing a lot of different hats. In the morning I'd be a flyman for a show run, and in the afternoon I'd be welding the next set. So, you can kind of look at the title show by show, but I think one of the things that's helped me be successful is a knowledge of a lot of these different areas of carpentry, or the ability to try and learn and gain more knowledge. Because like for the Foy carpentry, or the Foy operation was a whole new wheelhouse for me. And there were times where I had a lot of imposter syndrome, and I was like, give me a hammer and screws. I'm not ready for this computer and all this stuff. But, I had a great teacher and I persevered. And now that's something I have under my belt for the next time. So let's see, I guess a head carpenter on tour, to talk about that, is the head of the carpentry department, but they're also the head of the technical aspect of the tour. And they're also the communicator between the trucking company and all of the venues and your company to make sure that things happen on time. You're also in charge of staffing the local calls based on local conditions. So you have typically a basic number of folks that you'll hire for every city you go to. And if it's a tougher venue to get inside, you hire more people or add more time. And so it's up to the head carpenter to determine all of that and make that happen before we get there.
Typically local union guys?
Yes. Well, so I've always traveled on what are known as yellow card shows. So the union has this thing called a yellow card for Broadway musicals, and that has the basic number of people that you will need at a minimum at every city you go to. And it is up to the local union at that city to fill that call.
Got you. So how long does a typical load-in take?
So all of the shows I've been on have either been 8-hour or 10-hour load-ins.
Okay, straight. Boom.
Yep. So start at 8 a.m. or 6 a.m. and finish by 5.
And off the truck and put it up.
Yep.
Cool.
So that's kind of the head carpenter sort of does everything to plan and get the show in, and then manages the load in as it happens. And then like the Flyman on tour is in charge of everything overhead. So they'll do all the soft good rigging. They'll call all the battens in and out, and they're the ones that are also in charge of any flying pieces during the show from the fly system. And then there'll usually be a head carpenter, a flyman, and assistant carpenter. And the assistant carpenter is there to do all the other just regular carpentry stuff. And we'll be tying up the drops while the flyman's bringing in pipes and staging stuff to get ready. So those two are technically at the same level, but they just have slightly different tasks that involve working with each other a lot. A master carpenter in like a build situation is just typically going to, there's kind of two ways to do it. Either they're going to be leading projects with a few other folks to get big things done, or the master carpenter will be doing the very detailed projects that are like centerpieces of the show, while other people manage the masses to like build walls or whatever. So, or it can be both of those things. So that's kind of what a master carpenter will tend to be.
Okay.
And then, is there any other sort of job titles that we want to talk about?
Maybe talk a little bit about all the different carpentry positions as opposed to like the scenic designer. What's the difference there?
So in some aspects of technical theater, specifically audio, the audio designer, the sound designer, will pick their mixer for the run of the show because they're presenting the design every night. With carpentry, scenic design and the enaction of the design tend to be a bit separated. A scenic designer isn't going to have like their favorite carpenter to do projects with, kind of like unlike how a sound designer will have their favorite mixer to put on their shows.
Yeah.
So as a carpenter, you're networking a little bit more with like production managers and technical directors to try and get the jobs, because the technical directors and production managers are typically the ones who are communicating with the scenic designers. And there's a separation there based on whoever's producing it. So it essentially, as a carpenter, you're typically not aiming to work with a certain scenic designer because the industry doesn't quite work like that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Unless you want to be an associate designer to help with projects and stuff, it's going to be hard as a carpenter to ever work with one scenic designer for the rest of your life or have them as a mentor. Unless you're in a small theater, in which case, the scenic designer might also be the TD, and then you and them can work together well in the future. Does that make sense?
No, totally. That's exactly what I was wondering. Yeah, that's good. And so then, you mentioned, I was going to say, what does it take to get work as a carpenter? But it's just being known for being a guy who gets it done, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a couple options. You can, when you are a scenic carpenter for a roadhouse, your skill set is going to be considerably different than if you're a scenic carpenter in a scene shop. You don't need to have the same fabrication skills to be a carpenter like in a roadhouse, because you're not fabricating anything out there. You're assembling and disassembling with the occasional fabrication. I'm a firm believer that the fabrication skills will help you in all aspects of theatrical carpentry.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
More of a knowledge of that. But so if you just want to be a carpenter, the first step is to try and get on the overhire call for a roadhouse.
So, Roadhouse, you've mentioned that several times. Talk to us about, what is it? I think is that a movie was it Patrick Swayze? I'm probably.
It is.
But that's not what is the Roadhouse in your sense?
A roadhouse refers to a theater or venue that is meant for just bringing in different tours, whether it's shows or speakers or, events, whatever else. It's they refer to it as a 4-wall venue, which means it has 4 walls and a fly system, and you bring your show in and provide all the necessary equipment for your show.
That's where all the national tours stop, right? So when we go see a show that's on tour, we're in a Roadhouse. That's great.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So I think I was saying most of the money right now is in the touring industry in theater. Okay. If you want to go work at a smaller community theater and do what is typically more similar to this type of shows and stuff you do in college, you're gonna maybe have an amazing time and also possibly contribute some incredible art, but the salary is typically not going to be what it is if you're a member of the union or if you're touring or working as a part of the touring industry.
Or like the community theaters I've been involved with, it was, hey, great show. No money. But that's okay, because that's, again, anywhere that you can learn and get involved, and you're networking, you're adding skills, you're adding to your resume, you can add to your portfolio. All of those are good things. So anywhere you can get in is good.
Yeah,
right?
And so I guess to piggyback kind of on that thought is that there's also not very many theaters in the country that have a shop where they build their own set and put it on stage next door, like a lot of colleges and high schools and everywhere else tend to have. So that's not as typical to come across once you get into the professional world. And so if you find one, and that's your interest, it's a great opportunity. That's what brought me to Nashville when I went there.
That's good to know. And even on the tour, are you typically? I know Emma shared with us the wardrobes are typically, they pick them up off the Broadway show that has just ended for the tour. Is that the same with the set? Are you generally just adapting a Broadway set that has kind of been retired and putting it on the road, or is it you build new?
It can be all of those things. For Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, we took several pieces that were from the first national tour and from Broadway, and adapted them, and then we built a few pieces new because of size or budgetary constraints or whatever else. On Color Purple, we built the set completely new because the set was such an installation on Broadway, they weren't able to adapt any of that for touring. Touring also, Broadway shows are built into the theater. Like they're
right. They're built around the theater, that the space.
Yeah. Tours need to be able to get put together and break apart really easily. So there's typically, when shows are brought directly from Broadway to tour and it's all the same set, it's typically a lot of heartache getting the show able to tour and
I bet.
appropriately. So typically you do want, unless it's like specific units or scenic pieces, you kind of want to hope that the tour gets built new.
Which I would imagine is one of those instances that your TD is going to want to hire carpenters who know their stuff, because you never know, when you go into a venue, you may need to fabricate something real quick. Right.
So, and that's the other thing with touring, is that the technical director is not quite as much of a figurehead in touring as typically the production manager. And so the production manager will work with scenic design to get a set bidded out to different shops. And then a shop that comes back with the right price and the right time frame will get picked by the production manager. And then sometimes, depending on the show, they'll hire what's called a production carpenter, and they're there to supervise the shop, make sure the shop builds things to the specs that the scenic designer asks for and to the specs required for touring the show. So a production carpenter typically has a lot of touring experience and a good understanding of fabrication in order to make sure that it's getting built correctly and to have tricks to make it come apart and go together as quickly as possible as well.
So are most of those production houses in the New York area, just out of curiosity?
I would say, honestly, I'm not certain. I would say most are probably colleges.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, like that build their own, that have a shop attached to the theater. Most times it's a college that has that. And, because even regional theaters that build their own sets, usually the shop is somewhere else in town.
Right. Yeah. No. Okay. Makes
But
total sense.
most regional theaters will be producing their own stuff and building it somewhere in town or getting it shipped in. So regional theaters typically are doing shows that are built into their theater as well, even if it's a show that everyone knows about or something.
So what about the shops oh, totally it does. Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. So, but what about the shops that are contracted by the production manager to build the touring sets? Are those, and maybe I misunderstood. Those
are typically, they're all over the country, but most of them are in the Jersey, New York area.
Right.
Because their primary bread and butter is going to be Broadway houses, installations, or major tours, like major huge tours. But like PRG is a huge shop there, and they're about 90 minutes west of New York City. Tate is somewhere around there. There's Proof Productions is just outside of Philly. And these are all union shops that build Broadway shows and tours. There's another shop down in Charleston that builds tours called TTS Studios. So there's a couple of shops in Ohio as well. So the shops are kind of all over, and the set just gets trucked to wherever they begin the tech rehearsals for the show.
Got you. And so that's another career opportunity. Somebody wants this, but they don't want to tour. Those shops probably are a great place to look for potential work, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. You just a lot of times, if it's a union shop, it's it's not nepotism, but there's just a lot of folks whose family's been working there for a long time.
Got you.
So
okay.
It can be tough to get a foot in the door at times until you've been a member of that community for a little while. But if you're in an area where you've already lived in, then you'll probably be okay. But if you move to a new area, then you have to understand with a lot of these different, especially in the union, but just theater generally, there's some networking and some groundwork that has to be laid before you start getting access to the better jobs typically. Yeah,
it's about knowing people and being a good worker and being nice. We hear that over and over. That's great. That's great. So talk to me real quick. We don't have a lot of time left, but I'd love to hear this from every star that we talk to. And that is just, man, what gets you jazzed about what you do? Why do you love doing scenic carpentry? Is it just the building of it that your favorite? Is it the relationships? What is it that takes Bo and gets him up in the morning and said, man, I'm ready to get back to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I have to really consider what the answer to that is. Some days more than others, but
that's fair. We're all that way.
But one of the things I think that does it for me is what the extremely unique set of challenges that's presented within the theatrical community. Because I not only have to know how to use these power tools or whatever else, I also have to know and keep in mind how things need to go together and work with the other departments within the show, how to be safe and to know that I'm doing things the right way. And so some of it for me is knowing that the skills that I bring to the table aren't necessarily matched by other folks, and that sense of pride in knowing that I was able to handle a pretty big problem or solve a pretty big problem, and know that not everybody would be able to do that. And that's one of the things that really really gives me some drive when I'm faced with some higher challenges.
That's awesome. Yeah, because imagine, especially on tour, you've got to be a creative problem solver because you never know what's going to come up. That's good. What about the creative aspect of it? You ever just sit back and get a chance to look at what you've done and see how the audience loves it? And is that just like an adrenaline rush to be able to do that and see, I did that and these people love that?
Yeah, it definitely is. But as a roadie, you don't truly get that opportunity to witness that a whole lot because we don't have a backup in the crew, so we don't get to go out to the audience and see the audience react. At least as a carpenter backstage, the lighting and audio folks will be front of house and get to be a more visceral part of that at times. But at the end of Cats, after I trained my replacement, I got to go sit out in the house and watch the production, which I'd never watched from start to finish from the house. And it looked great. It sounded great. All my friends who I'd been touring with for months were up there killing it on stage. and the audience was loving it. And it was at the Kennedy Center, actually, so it was just kind of like a big, notable venue to be in. And I was sitting in the house watching these folks do a great job, and that I had done a part of it. And so, yeah, it was definitely really cool to do that, especially, I think, since it's so rare that I get to experience it in that sense.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That is cool. Well, this has been awesome. And it is time, Bo, for you to drop a phrase on us that's going to live forever, or until the trailer falls apart or whatever. On our Gateway Mortgage Wisdom Wall of Wisdom. And we've got some great ones already. Your wife, It's Only a Show, which is such good wisdom for kids, especially to learn now, right? Save yourself some heart out. So you've had some time to think about it. What is going to be your legacy on the Wall of Wisdom?
I think I'd say theater is a small community. People remember you.
People remember. That's good. Yeah. So think before you put your foot in your mouth.
Yep. Don't be a jerk. Work hard. Everyone knows someone else, and the longer you're in the community, the more people who know you or know of you. And
yeah,
they remember. They remember if you're bad, or they remember if you're cool.
Yep, absolutely. And someday they may be doing the hiring.
Exactly. Yep. You never know.
Very good. Well, you're challenging me to get all that on this piece of gaff tape, but I've got it, man. We're going to get it.
The theater is a small community? That was too much?
No, it's all right. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. All right, as long as I didn't give you 4 like Mike did, right?
I know it. Yeah, what's up with Mike? He made me write 4 of them on one piece, so we're good. You can still read yours. Some of his got a little crazy, but that's all right. Well, awesome. Well, it is time now we've got a few minutes left, so we're going to do some Q&A. So let me pull these up here and see what questions people have for you. And let's see. All right, so at this point I'm going to have to edit because when it kicked me out, everybody, it erased all of your chats.
I know someone asked how many trucks the show typically has.
Yeah, I saw Philip ask that, and you almost answered that, though, already in the interview. So anybody else that chatted in a question, go ahead and chat that back into me if you can. Sorry, it erased the entire chat transcript, I guess, when I got booted.
I was just going to elaborate on the trucks.
Okay.
A bus and truck show, which is like a smaller tour that's going to small venues, will typically be 2 to 4 trucks. Any of the bigger Broadway shows are going to be like 6, 7, 8, 11, 12. Like Lion King has, I think, 13 trucks. Wicked has 11.
So let's
it just depends.
Let's reset and have Philip come on and ask you that question. All right, so gotcha. Philip, I'm trying to think of a good way to come into this, but that's, let me think, what's the last thing? All right, so here we go. So Philip, be ready to unmute and ask your question. Very good, very good. So I definitely got that here on one piece of gaff tape. So, but while it dries, we are going to cut over and do some Q&A. So let me pull those up. And Philip Newcomer, you have a question for Bo. So if you want to unmute your mic and ask him what that is, that would be great.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
I was wondering how many trucks it was typical to have on a tour.
That's a great question. As you may have noticed, my tours either had 3 or 4 most of the time, and one was 5. But smaller shows, which are called bus and truck tours, will typically have anywhere from 2 to 4. And the bigger Broadway shows will usually have 5 to 8, and it can go anywhere on up to 13 or 16, depending on how big the tour is.
Awesome, man. And I guess the load-ins increase exponentially as well, right?
Yeah, typically the most time that anyone will ever have for a load-in, except for Lion King, which does a 2-day load-in, or a 3-day load-in, excuse me, will be 16 hours.
Wow.
But Lion King, I think they do a 20-hour load-in.
That's crazy, seeing a lot of those touring shows, to think, man, taking it up, putting it down in that amount of time is insane. That would be fun to experience that sometime. That's cool. Madison Edwards has a question for you. Madison, if you want to unmute and ask, that's a great question.
Hi, so my question was, what was one of your most favorite pieces of set to work on?
That's a great question. I've worked on a lot of different sets. When I built the Outsiders in Nashville, it was a lot of welding, and it was a sort of forced perspective billboard, but like the back of it, so it had all this framing and sort of pathways behind it, and I had to build it with like 16th inch accuracy as I was welding these metal pieces together.
That's crazy.
I welded a bunch of frames, and then we set the like the actual pathways on top of them once we were out on stage, because it was too big to assemble all at once. And so when I had welded all of that and we put it together and it all fit, that was such a huge feeling of accomplishment for me. So I think that was definitely a really notable set piece. Like that was a pretty awesome one to work on.
That's also, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, I also did an airplane propeller in college that I really like doing as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And as somebody who has just learned to weld, that kind of accuracy is insane. I'm nowhere near that, man. That's impressive. That's impressive. Let's see. Philip had another question here. Philip, you want to unmute and ask that as well?
Sure. My other question was, are there any specific kinds of certifications you have to get in order to do those jobs on the road?
That's a great question. So short answer is no. The companies are going to look at your resume and kind of look at maybe your portfolio or what you've done if you're coming out of college and don't have like touring experience yet. But like for doing the Foy operation, I had to go get trained by the Foy company out at their shop in Vegas before they would let me take their equipment out on the road. So that was, they had certified me to do their stuff, but I was given the job prior to their certification. However, they could have said he's not allowed to operate our equipment. There are certifications known as ETCP certifications for rigging and electricians. Those are by no means a requirement, but they do look very good to have on your resume. I'm not ETCP certified. It's a bit costly to take the test, and it's kind of an independent evaluation. So it looks really great, and most of the industry respects it, but no one is typically requiring that for anything. Mostly to go on tour, you have to just be ready to work 16 hours a day on little sleep and be willing to work hard and get a show in and out and work with a bunch of different people who have a variety of different skill sets. So you got to be a very flexible and communicative person.
Yeah, people skills and obviously carpentry skills. Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's it. We are out of time, unfortunately. But Bo, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome. Just loved having you here. I've learned a lot. I know everyone that has been listening has learned a lot from you, and such a great story. So thank you. One of the things we want to do, because you are a star, man, and we know that most of the time, never do you get to go out on the stage and get a curtain bow. You don't get a curtain call, right? You don't get to take a bow. And so everyone unmute your mics, and let's give Bogaev a round of applause here. All right.
Thanks, guys.
You totally deserve that. Totally deserve that. Well, that is it for us this episode, and thank you all for joining us, and thank you Gina Thomason and Moore High School for being our feature school of the day. And again, thank you Bogaev, and thank you our guests that joined us live. It's just been another great episode. I tell you what, I'm never let down by our guests. They're all incredible people with a lot to teach us and a lot to learn. So Gateway Mortgage, again, thank you for a Wall of Wisdom. We got to put this up now. We're going to put this right here. Boom. Theater is a small community. People will remember you, and we're going to remember you, Bo. And right now,
Thanks a lot, guys.
hey, absolutely, sir. And have a great day, everyone. And we're going to leave you with honoring some seniors of 2020 from Moore High School right now and getting to see them. So we'll see everybody next time. Bye-bye.